daily struggle, thinking only of escaping. Who would want to stay in such a home? I want nothing to do with you from now on. Don't you dare come near me or my loved ones ever again." Perhaps because I had never shown my emotions like this before, George stopped resisting in shock. Overwhelmed by the reality before him, he collapsed, drained of all strength. Thus, I was finally freed from George's malevolence and decided to move to India with Tony. After things settled down, I went straight to the hospital with Lily by my side and was diagnosed with depression. Mike suggested that it would be best for my recovery to stay at his place for a while before starting a new life, and I gratefully accepted his offer. "We're here for you. You can rely on us for anything. If that husband of yours tries to barge in, I'll kick him out myself. Just leave it to me." Tony and I deeply appreciated their reassuring words and kindness. The reason for Tony's return to US was a call from Mike, who had been on the phone with Tony at that time, informing him of my situation and convincing him to come back immediately. "Why didn't you rely on me?" Although Tony scolded me upon his return, knowing I struggled to ask for help, he also apologized for not coming to check on me sooner in US and hugged me tightly, apologizing repeatedly. Thanks to Tony's quick actions in arranging a lawyer and accommodation, the situation was resolved smoothly. "From now on, live with us over there. Learning a foreign language might be tough, but my wife and friends will give you all the support you need, so don't worry." Saying so, Tony offered me a job at his company, where his colleagues welcomed me warmly. As for George, he and his mother were sued for moral harassment by us and are now chased by debts. After explaining everything to my former colleagues before leaving US, George lost his position at his company. Losing his credibility, life at the company became difficult for him, leading to his resignation. He now lives at his parents' home, scraping by on day-to-day jobs. He sent me a letter of apology which said the incident taught him that bad actions come back to haunt you. But of course, I couldn't trust his words and made sure to receive compensation from him. My long living hell finally came to an end. Now I live a comfortable and joyful life in India, surrounded by kind people. Do you really have a lot of savings? Those words from my husband Weston gave me a bad feeling. I have a separate savings account, in addition to our joint account. When I was working, we used to communicate how much we were saving from time to time. But since I retired, our living expenses were covered by the pension, so I didn't bother telling him about my savings. I decided to use this money in case one of us got sick or if there was an absolute need. Yet recently, Weston seems obsessed with money. He's been wastefully spending on solo trips and flamboyant, expensive clothes he would never wear. I already know why his spending has become so reckless. Clenching my fists in frustration, I gritted my teeth. No, $450,000. It's all in the safe. As soon as I said that, Weston's face blatantly lit up. That's all I wanted to know. Without saying much more, he left, looking pleased. He's probably planning to take my money. All this time, he'd say things like, "A woman like you working hard is creepy," or "Hand over all the money you earn to me." After all, he criticized me on a whim. In the end, he turns to someone else's money when he's insecure about his future. How dare he leech off my money while he's been demeaned me? I won't let that happen. A sense of revenge started to grow within me. I'm Evelyn. Born into a family of doctors, I was expected to become one just like my parents. Luckily, I loved studying, and apart from the pressure from my parents, I had a desire to save lives as a doctor. I couldn't forget the kind female doctor who treated me when I was hospitalized with pneumonia as a child, and I always admired her. After graduating from medical school, I proudly became an internist. My parents, also internists, would have preferred me to be a more active surgeon. But in the end, I think it was good that I was able to take over their hospital. Being able to face patients at an easy pace must have suited my nature. Thanks to this, our hospital thrived, and a few years later, I got married. That's when I married Weston. It wasn't a love marriage, but rather through an introduction by acquaintances, so our relationship was neither particularly close nor bad. However, Weston, a bossy husband, really hated the idea of his wife working. Probably it because he worked in a factory and was concerned about earning less than me. Thus, his male pride made him act like that. Life with Weston, who believed women should stay home and not work, was painful. Does it really matter who earns more in a marriage? Of course, I rebelled, ignoring such views and continuing my duty as a doctor. You dare defy me, although you are a woman? Whenever we argued, "You're a woman," Weston always said. It was always like that. Don't slack off on housework because you're a woman, don't work all the time because you're a woman, don't earn more than me because you're a woman. Looking back, I think Weston felt inferior to me from that time. It seemed that he oppressed me condescendingly to relieve stress. Had I been a weaker woman, I surely would have been dominated by Weston. Being strong-willed, I constantly fought with him. However, our relationship, which was developing cracks, began to heal with the birth of our son Austin 2 years into our marriage. Children are a source of joy, and they were exactly that for us. Weston, by doting on the kids, could forget his hatred towards me, allowing me to work guilt-free. But when Austin expressed his desire to become a doctor, Weston's hostility turned towards me again. He wants to be a doctor like you? I'm worried about his future. A hospital run by a woman is bound to be no good. Hey, why would you say that? I'm just working for the family. Do you enjoy always tarnishing my honor? Is earning money that great? Would you be happy if I ran out of money and we couldn't make ends meet? Such arguments were common. I thought everything he worried about was ridiculous. Money shouldn't matter whether earned by a man or woman, and I couldn't understand his pride in wanting to dominate. However, he did love Austin, so that was a relief. I was fine with being the only one disliked by him. Austin grew into a fine young man and went to medical school. After graduation, he worked at a university hospital, fulfilling his dream of becoming a doctor. And after working there for over a decade, he took over the hospital when I retired. I'm going to do my best as an internist at Mom's hospital. Austin, you don't have to push yourself. Do what you love most. I've always wanted to be like Mom. I'm actually really happy to take over the hospital. I was so moved by his words that I felt tears of joy. At the same time, I noticed that Weston's look towards me and Austin had shifted from hostility to resentment. For Weston, respect should be for the father, and the mother just a supporting role. Honestly, I considered divorce. But bringing it up could infuriate Weston, and more importantly, I couldn't do it thinking of Austin. So, we entered our old age with an awkward relationship. Life alone with Weston was quieter than I expected. We hardly talked or went out together. Just watching TV in the same space or eating the meals I cooked. Compared to when I was juggling work, housework, and childcare, it was relatively peaceful. No more nagging about how women are or how much I earn. Since Austin took over the hospital, Weston stopped snapping at me, and considering how I was always belittled before. Because you're a woman. These times were quite peaceful. With Austin grown up and me retired, we finally had a trouble-free daily life. But then the unexpected happened. Weston started to leave the house frequently. At first, I thought he was just going for walks during the day, but it seemed not to be the case. He'd been gone from morning to evening, sometimes not returning home for a whole day. I didn't want to suspect a man in his 70s, but I had a terrible feeling. And not just that, unbelievable amounts of money were being withdrawn from our joint account. It wasn't through credit card use, so I had no idea what for. We get our pensions, but withdrawing nearly $1,000 every month would make life unsustainable. I confronted Weston. Hey, why are you withdrawing so much money? This account is for rent and living expenses, something we made together. I'm in trouble if you use it selfishly." Faced with my accusations, he laughed mockingly, as if exasperated. "A little bit should be fine, right? We have plenty. What if we run out when we need it? Are you going to cover the money you spent?" "Shut up. That's why I hate you. Acting all high and mighty, although you're a woman." After a long time, I heard it again. "You're a woman." That line. I've always just let it slide without talking back, but his words are terrible. If I ever said, "Because you're a man," he would forget his own words and definitely get angry. It's not okay at all. It's not just your money. You're supposed to have your own personal savings account. When I said this firmly, he was at a loss for words. We each have our own savings accounts. The joint account is for necessary expenses like living costs and rent, while the savings accounts are for personal savings. We made this arrangement due to Weston's whim of not wanting to be upset by my income. So, the rule is, if we want something, we use our own savings account. He, withdrawing money from the joint account, is breaking the rules. "Listen, if you withdraw a large sum again, I won't put my pension into the joint account anymore." "What? Are you even a wife?" Weston was furious as if I were being unreasonable, but I didn't change my stance. Why should I allow him to freely use the money meant for our married life? Normally, you'd consult beforehand or replenish if you spend extra. Nevertheless, I couldn't ignore his reckless spending. I decided to secretly investigate where the money was going. One day, I followed him when he went out and saw something shocking. There, in the city, waiting for someone, was him, approached by a woman. She looked young, both in appearance and dress. After talking for a while, the two of them started walking through the busy streets, arm in arm. I couldn't believe it but continued to follow them, knowing I might never learn the truth if I lost sight of them. They entered an inconspicuous cafe in an alley. "Hey Weston, for my birthday, I want the new bag from that brand." "Ah, sure. I'll buy anything for you, Kelly." "Yay! You're so reliable, Weston." In the noisy cafe, I could hear a young, cute voice contrasting Weston's gruff one. The woman sitting across from Weston looked to be in her 30s. From their conversation, they seemed to be in a close relationship. "Hey, aren't you going to leave your wife yet? I'm waiting for you to get a divorce, you know?" "Sorry about that. She doesn't want to split up, and it's troubling me." "Your wife is a doctor, right? And she's got a tough personality?" "That's right. Always looking down on and disrespecting her husband, the worst kind of woman." They laughed and joked about me, their crude laughter filling the air. Strangely enough, it seemed they planned to live together. He was timing his divorce with me for that purpose. It made no sense. We were already in our 70s, and he was planning to be with such a young girl. Was Weston using our living expenses to provide for this woman? Normally, one would realize they're being scammed, but his judgment seemed clouded. It's improbable for such a young woman to fall for a man decades older. Besides, my dad's still in the retirement home, and considering his future care, I need money. My wife is a doctor with more than enough money. I'll divorce to be with you after taking that money. That will shock your wife so much that she'll be sick in bed. That woman? As long as I get the money, I don't care what happens to her. Listening to their conversation, an immense rage boiled inside me. Since then, I started gathering evidence, but the mistreatment towards me didn't stop there. "Do you really have a large sum in your savings?" One day, out of the blue, Weston asked me. I had a very bad feeling about it. I have savings, but it's something I've accumulated on my own, so I never bothered telling him after I retired. As he wants to know my savings, it probably means he intends to take them. Without changing my expression, I answered. $450,000. It's all in the safe. As soon as I said that, his face visibly brightened. That's all I wanted to know. Without saying much, he left, looking pleased. I was sure of it. He is only interested in my money. After all this time, he's been saying things like, "A woman working hard is creepy," or "All the money earned should go to the husband." He's been said whatever he wants. In the end, he relies on someone else's money when he's unsure about his future. He belittles his wife and then tries to take her money? I won't let that happen. I felt a sense of revenge growing inside me. The next day, when I went to the living room, there was a piece of paper on the table. It was a divorce application. And when I went to the room with the safe, the black, cold safe was gone. I'm surprised he managed to move such a heavy object on his own. As expected, he stole the safe and left the divorce papers, then left the house. Weston called me on the day he stole the safe. I ignored it as it was too bothersome to deal with, but there were hundreds of calls in half a day, showing his obsession. However, I won't answer his calls. At least not now. In the meantime, I decided to tell Austin everything that happened. I thought he would be shocked to know his real father had an affair and ran off with his mother's savings. However, his reaction was more indifferent than I expected. I figured he might do something like that. He's always been desperate to look down on Mom. Austin had noticed our discord since he was young and saw through his twisted pride. He's very wise and intelligent. But if the safe was stolen, isn't Mom's livelihood in danger? That's okay. There was no money in the safe. Yes, the safe Weston ran off with had not a single dollar in it. Instead, I filled it with the results of the infidelity investigation, as much as I could. Photos of the two together, receipts he had left on the table, and more. He must be panicking now, for the money wasn't there, and realized his affair has been discovered. That's why he's been calling persistently. Moreover, my savings account has hardly any savings in it. Thinking that rent and living expenses must not be delayed, I secretly added money to the joint account since the beginning of our marriage. In reality, he often didn't contribute to living expenses and used it for his own pocket money. Because of that, I ended up paying most of the living expenses and even Austin's childcare costs. I couldn't afford to save money. The account created after marriage is subject to property division, but there's hardly anything to split. I have a lot of money saved from before I was married, but that's not subject to property division, so he can't get his hands on it. I saved it for emergencies, but if I'm divorcing him, there's no need to be frugal. So, what will you do now, Mom? If you have nowhere to go, you can come to my apartment. That's okay. I've already moved. Really? Yes. I've already filed for divorce. The day after he left, I moved to an apartment I had arranged beforehand. The house originally belonged to him, so even without savings, selling it would help financially. Mom, if you're getting a divorce, you should consult a lawyer to avoid complications with the property division. I will. I also need to get compensation in the divorce trial. Austin was surprisingly calm, which allowed me to respond firmly. Just knowing he'd support me if needed was empowering. Following Austin's advice, I consulted a lawyer about property division and compensation for the divorce trial. Since the safe was stolen, I was advised to report it to the police, so I decided to file a theft report. Now that it's come to this, I'm determined to thoroughly punish Weston. When I was ready to fight, he unexpectedly showed up at my new apartment. Luckily, I could find it was him through the door. How do you know where I live? What do you want now? Hey! How dare you deceive me? There wasn't a single dollar in the safe. Oh, you have the nerve to say that when you committed theft? And you left the house to move out. It seemed he had located me using a detective. What a waste of his little money. And what about those photos? Stop dragging Kelly into this. I'm the one who got dragged into this. You dared to misuse our living expenses. I'll make sure you pay the compensation in the divorce trial. He gasped in surprise because of my strong stance and the mention of compensation in the divorce trial. Then he suddenly changed his tone, speaking weakly as if pleading. Hey, you haven't filed the divorce papers, right? We're married, let's stop this silly fight. What? I couldn't help but respond with a voice filled with anger. He shrank back as if scared, but I didn't feel a bit sorry for him. This is not silly to me at all. And I've already filed for divorce. We're not a couple anymore. What? How dare you? You're the one who left the divorce papers and left, right? Selling that house should cover the compensation in the divorce trial. If you come to the house again, I'll call the police. After ending the conversation through the door, he lingered outside for a while before leaving pathetically. He stole the safe hoping to become rich. Thinking about how long I've been belittled by someone like him makes me angry again. But I can't lose my composure. My revenge against